So today we have a presentation. It's going to be 4 disconnected stories about food with talking about the economics behind it. So first, we're talking about cheese. So while Switzerland remained neutral throughout the 5 years that World War I went on, they amassed enormous stockpiles of cheese. Well, outside in Europe, their export market was being destroyed, and at the end of the war, to avoid having their prices completely collapse, they created what's called a cartel. So what is a cartel? Well, the first thing you might think about is this guy. But, that's just one type of cartel. There's also OPEC, which is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and the Swiss Cheese Union, of course. So any sort of cartel is an association of manufacturers who get together to control supply in order to control prices. Well, what the Swiss Cheese Union would do is they came in and they said, okay, look, we're going to take all these thousands of types of cheese, we're only going to export 3 of them, we're going to export this amount, and they basically designated prices and where they could export cheeses and types. To finance this, the Swiss government decided to give them export subsidies. So an export subsidy is something that you would give to a producer in order to help them make more money. And in order to subsidize these exports. Well, this is very expensive, and all of these export subsidies came from the taxpayers, which made it very unpopular. Well, this is the Swiss government. That's a real picture of them doing export subsidies. So eventually, of course, this monopolistic entity became corrupt. People were taking kickbacks. They'd say, if you want to export this amount of cheese to this place, you better give us this amount of money. There were WTO violations. This was a government entity that was trying to dominate the market, and that is against WTO. And then the government subsidies kept increasing, people paying more tax money for a corrupt organization that was not adding a lot to the Swiss economy. In 1999, it was broken up, and now we have all the cheeses that you see in the supermarket today that are fancy and different. So that's why, we got lots of cheese.
And what happened was the United States was able to better produce chickens because of better chicken breeding and better chicken facilities. This eventually led to them having a lot of chickens, and they're like, what are we going to do with all these chickens? So they're like, let's deport these guys. So we're going to send them to Europe. And when they sold them to Europe, eventually by the 1960s, they owned half of the market. After 18 months of negotiation, the European Economic Community eventually said, nope, we're not going to let the tariffs go away, and we're going to keep them around. So we have this debonair, President Lyndon B. Johnson, this handsome guy. He eventually poses a chicken tax on December 4th, 1963, and this affected chicken, potato starch, and dextrose, and light trucks. And what their excuse was that the import cost of European trucks is equivalent to the loss of revenue that America had with chickens. So that was 25%, and I know you're thinking, like, why trucks? Why is this important? So next thing we have is, I'm going to explain why trucks. And what we had during this time was Volkswagen was dominating the market for light trucks at this time. And Walter Reuther, who was the president of U.S. Auto Workers at the time, he didn't really like this. So he told President Lyndon B. Johnson, he was like, hey, if you help me get rid of the competition, I'll help support you in an election. And President Lyndon B. Johnson, because he's a politician, he was like, you know what? Sure, I'll help you out. So he imposed a tariff on chicken and trucks to the United States, and this went ahead and decreased the amount of imports of chickens to the United States and trucks.
In the European Union, there's an extremely low supply of milk and milk fat products. So there's a butter crisis going on in Europe because of it. Now, why exactly is this not being fixed? Again, as I spoke, it's because of the politics and bureaucratic policies in place. They believe that they're protecting the consumer such that they're not gouging the price on the consumer, only allowing a price increase. But this creates an inefficiency where actual supermarkets don't actually want to supply butter because they're not able to charge the market price to keep it on the shelf. So this lobbying company, AIBI, which stands for the International Association for Bakers in France, they're lobbying the French Parliament to lower prices and having consumers pay the market price. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, let's take a look. In other countries in the EU, they're charging the market price. In Germany, they're seeing a 52% increase on milk products. Think about that. currently you guys pay probably on average $3.50, $3.75 for a gallon of milk. What if that price were to shoot up next week to $6 or $6.50? Well, would you pay for it? No, I don't think so. We get salt from a company like Morton Salt that does it by themselves and actually sells it to the consumer. They're able to do it on such a cheap scale because they have a fixed cost associated with the actual production of salt. And this fixed cost would be the transportation. Well, the YouTuber kept coming back and forth in order to make the salt. Well, what if you had a truck with 40,000 pounds of salt? So that meant that the actual salt per unit was a lot cheaper. That's why we don't see those extreme prices like $1,500 for a chicken sandwich.
So what is the mafia doing in your kitchen? We traditionally associate the Italian mafia with criminal activities, including the distribution of illicit substances. Why are they becoming involved in the food and agriculture industries? Researchers have recently discovered that the mafia is involved in all aspects of the food distribution chain, involving itself all the way from harvesting to even sale. This includes forcing their associates to be employed on the Italian farms and in their fields, to giving special preference to their trucking companies, to even having their hands in the leadership and management of different grocery stores and restaurants in Italy to get special offers. Over 5,000 Italian restaurants have been found to have ties with the Italian mafia already. So why are they in our kitchen? As it is with other illegal activities, it's about the money, it's about the profits. This is a $16 billion a year enterprise that they're involving themselves in. They're taking business away from hardworking Italians in all aspects of production, and this has been found to be even 3 times as profitable. This figure is coming from the fact that high-quality olive oils can sell for up to $50 a gallon. Since it costs only $7 a gallon to make these cheap seed oil varieties, these huge profit margins lead to a really lucrative industry for the mafia. So how do we stop it? We can start by warning the public, improving food regulation laws, implementing the food police, and investing in customs and regulation. The food police specifically has been Italy's primary solution in fixing this problem. They specially train police officers and scientists to test small batches of imports in order to see and look for counterfeit and food fraud. If we implement these types of solutions and more, we'll be able to put agro-mafia to rest and hopefully keep them out of our kitchen. Thank you.